Welcome back to TARTLEcast on this windy, snowy, cold morning in early spring here in New Mexico. Somebody put a timestamp on this episode for me.
Right now.
We are 35 seconds in, 36, 37. All right, good. Timestamping. Why is that important? Why is timestamping important?
Especially when we talk about
Let's talk about time. No.
So when we talk about safety, we talk about trust. We talk about decentralization. We talk about blockchain timestamping.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is really important. And you know as well as I do what happened in 2008 with the white paper that came out.
Satoshi Nakamoto.
And with creating Bitcoin, BTC.
Satoshis. That's right, yeah.
And so this decentralized ledger technology.
Yeah, so the timestamp is so important with this. And I got to kick this off. So the idea here is you have a ledger. That's all it is. It's a hash. It's cryptography saying, okay, this cryptographic hash happened at this point, representative of a specific value. There's a time associated with it. If that moves, when it's either processed, written to the chain, whatever, there's a time on that. Now, we're going to have an issue when two things are happening simultaneously.
Right.
The thing with blockchain is something has to happen first. There's a set order.
Yes.
Okay? And that is the requisite for that is a timestamp. Timestamping is extremely important, especially when you look at provenance. When did this occur? When was it owned? Even if you apply blockchain to logistics and supply chain, what point in time? When was this ledger? When was the block processed? When was it written to the ledger? And being able to track that over time gives us very specific analysis of the provenance of that data on the blockchain, of that cryptographic hash.
Yeah, I understand that. And blockchain tech didn't start with Satoshi's white paper. It was actually invented in 1991 as a way to verify and protect content through a concept called, and this is what we're talking about, time stamping.
Yeah.
So Satoshi's famous Bitcoin white paper, he cites another paper in his white paper. It's called How to Timestamp a Digital Document. And it was published by Stuart Haber and W. Scott Stornetta in 1991. And the two researchers knew this, that in all the digital world, the issue of certifying documents when they were created and when they were changed would become an issue. So it's very, very simple to understand it.
Yeah.
But you're looking at a PDF document.
But you need to know when. Because if there's a change, did this change happen in the past? Did someone change it in the future? Like, what if someone goes in and alters the metadata on it that says, oh, this changed, like, blah, blah. That's the whole point of, like, an e-signature.
Mm-hmm.
When did it actually happen?
Yes.
That's how DocuSign took off. If there was no such thing as a timestamp and actually writing it to that file, you couldn't have DocuSign. Because time allows for provenance. It's a measured aspect of cryptographic hashing on a blockchain. You have to have it so I can look back and see when this actually occurred without it being fraudulently said that, oh, it didn't occur at this point, it happened then. There's no he said, she said at this point. It said, this is the time written to the chain. This is the edit written to the chain. Or for this document, right, for changes in documents. That's why you have to have a timestamp. That's why it's so important.
Yeah, and I mean, we can even go old school. I was watching a Korean, I love Asian timepieces, historical time, documentaries and stuff like that, and movies. And they had one where it was in this movie where the king's doctor, the medical, I mean, this guy's like the top, and so the king's sick. So they had a log. So he would literally log the time that he went in and saw the king, the type of treatment that he had, the herbs and medicines that he gave, if he had tea or whatever, and then he would log out. And that log was guarded by two, high elite, like special forces type guys. And and this is something that's extremely important, because when we look at a notebook with dated entries, and then we look at certifications such as like having something notarized or mailing yourself something.
Yeah.
Remember you when I was a kid, you could buy the, what was those? And they were like timestamped from that. You could send it to that certain area and then they would stamp it.
Send it back.
And then send it back to you. Postcards and stuff like that. And you could have them at certain areas. But that's basically what it is in a digital format.
We've digitized it. And we've made it so that people, it's difficult to fraudulently say what that specific time was.
The problem, though, is to, in a digital world, you have documents that can be altered.
That's what I'm saying,
and then you need to create evidence of what was left behind or what happened during this whole process.
That's why you need a first in, first out ledger of cryptographic hashes that have a timestamp associated with it.
Yeah, so it's the timestamp, the data, not the medium.
Yeah, on TARTLE, there's a ledger that shows when that data was purchased. There's a hash associated with that. It's important that you have it because it helps with that provenance, the tracking, the truthfulness of documents, data, so many other things. And this is a very important aspect for the blockchain itself. Frankly, everything in society, having a timestamp is so important. This episode we have here is important because think about referencing. If I want to reference a specific thing in this episode of us talking here, I need to go to that timestamp. If I want to reference a file that was managed at some time, I need a timestamp. If I need to ask somebody about an event that occurred, can you tell me when it happened?
Yes.
We need them. It's referential for us. It allows for that progression of measurement to actually recognize change. Because if we don't have timestamps, you can't recognize change. You can cryptographically hash something and make it secure.
Right.
But what happens when there's a change? And like, when did that hash occur? That's important stuff.
Yeah, and then also, and this is great in this paper, they figured this out in the 90s. What happens, I like your word, what happens if the TSS puts a false timestamp on the hash?
Yep.
And Haber and Stornetta proposed two solutions. I want you to talk about each of these. Number one is use bits of previous requests to create new ones, which forces a chronological record. And then, so we have this chronological record. And then number two, make the whole system decentralized, transparent, and checkable.
Well, both of those are what were adopted in the Satoshi Nakamoto paper. It was both of those options.
Yes.
You force the date timestamp, right? And you force the chronological order. You force that encryption, and then you have this beautiful blockchain.
Yeah, and so once a block is added, it's verified by nodes on the blockchains, and then it's decentralized, and so it's locked into this public ledger, unable to be altered.
And that timestamp is verified by all those nodes across the globe.
Yeah, because if you take timestamping out of blockchain, what do you have?
You just have this decentralized encrypted mess. Yeah. You don't know what's first, what's last. You have one country with one node saying we did this first, and the other one saying, well, we did this first. And then it's like, well, who really owned the money first or owned the asset first?
Yeah, and I kind of want to close out the episode with this. Why do we need timestamping today? And this is Cointelegraph.com is where we got the article from. They say this, the need for authenticating documents wasn't just a 1990s concern. In a world where there's so much digital content or data being produced, and when distrust in content on the internet seems to be growing. Yep. Like, did you see the Tom Cruise where they faked the mouth and they took video? They're doing that now. I don't know what they call that, but they actually made him. They took a bunch of videos from like years and years and then put it together where it looks like he's sitting there in a room talking and saying this stuff, and he never said any of it. But AI? the video looks absolutely perfect. So when we have on the internet where there's this growing concern of distrust, we have to have timestamping because that video,
it helps with the provenance.
Yeah, it could be timestamped.
Yeah.
And then every change that's happening in that video.
Yeah, because you would know in that algorithm when the data comes in to have that AI create that face, you can see that the year 1990, the year 2001. And as you're analyzing the metadata that goes into it, you can see all these years are completely out of chronological order, which would immediately tell you that it's been falsified.
Yeah, so
essentially the macro file has been falsified by changing the order of all these micro files underneath.
Yeah, because the hash alters too.
Yes.
And so now you don't lock something. You do lock something in time.
Yeah.
And that's so important. It's you always remember the old like where you could go into the future. What was that old movie where they would go back in time and they had a thing and it looked like a big sled, like a Santa Claus sled? Remember the old? It was like a 1960s
Time
movie.
Machine.
Time Machine. Yeah.
Is it called Time Machine? But the
I
guy
think it
who's
is.
on it.
Yeah.
And he's got all the levers, the brass knobs.
Yeah. That was such a great movie.
Someone's gonna.
We should look it up.
Someone's screaming at us right now
because they love that movie. But yeah, that's you can't do that.
No.
So copyright disputes, which are going to be huge, legal data copyright disputes, plagiarism. original works.
Yeah.
So if you write a white paper and then somebody could easily take the PDF, put it in a PDF reader, and then change your white paper.
Oh, we wrote it first.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Think about the patent office.
Yeah.
You better hope you submit that patent for the telephone before the other guy does.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even in a white paper, trust for the reader if they know that the timestamp is there.
Yeah.
And it's from that user.
That's
so. And anytime TARTLE, and this is what I want to close in. With this timestamping, we see transparency, accountability, and authenticity.
Yes.
And those 3 words are the fundamental bricks of the pyramid that we've built for TARTLE.
That's what I'm talking about.
So let's get into why TARTLE is transparent, the accountability we have, and the authenticity without getting too much in the weeds, but just the macro view of that.
No, macro view, we're accountable for keeping your data safe and making sure that it's your data and you choose when to release it. So we have ledgers that record when that information is moving throughout the marketplace, and people can see when it's being moved. They can't see the information itself. Mm-hmm. They just know that there's a movement. And when that transaction happens from your account and when it's received by the other person. That's where it is. We have that. It has to be built into it. That fundamental idea of transparency, timestamping, all of that is so fundamentally important because it says this is not my data, but this is your data. This is here for your protection, your knowledge, your knowingness. And like everything else, you got to make sure that everybody can see across the globe that this in fact happened at this point, right? Because if people are buying an asset from you, this data, you want to make sure, even as a buyer, that it happened at this point, that it is provable at this point that it was purchased, that you took ownership of it.
Yeah, and we have buyers signing up every day on TARTLE. And if you're interested in buying data from TARTLE, how would you do that?
Oh, great question. You would go to tartle.co, you go to the buyer section, and you're going to click on Get Started. That's simple.